My ex-wife, from whom I hid, is trying to track me down. I'm 30 years old, and I found out about my wife's affair. She's also 30, with whom I had been married for 3.5 years. I had a contract-based job that sometimes required frequent business trips, but it also allowed me to work from home when I wasn't traveling. My wife had a well-paying position as a director of technical sales. We had what I thought was a very good marriage, although our relationship became strained due to my work trips and her increasingly long work hours. A bit of backstory. I met my wife, now ex-wife, 5 years ago at a barbecue hosted by a mutual friend. We started talking, instantly felt a connection, and the chemistry between us was undeniable. And honestly, I thought I was incredibly lucky to be with such a beautiful and intelligent woman. Somehow, she really liked my slightly rough character. When we started dating, within a few weeks, we couldn't get enough of each other. Every time we met at our apartments, clothes would practically fly off within seconds. After 18 months of dating, we got married and moved into a larger apartment, saving up to buy a house. But after the first couple of years of marriage, everything began to change. I was still crazy about her, but I noticed that she started picking fights over small things and getting irritated when I brought up her late work hours or increasingly frequent corporate events. She would say it was part of the price for success as she climbed the career ladder, or at least that was her justification. She claimed I had no right to reproach her since I was often away for weeks at a time. I told her I could reduce my business trips, and at that point, I was only traveling for 3 to 4 days about once every 5 weeks. These arguments went on endlessly and led nowhere. Looking back, I realized I had no idea that my wife was already involved in an affair. I wouldn't have suspected her if it weren't for her prolonged late hours at work and the gradual decline of our intimate life. I chalked it up to her being tired. However, my self-esteem took a serious hit due to her constant rejections of my attempts at intimacy. I didn't see any secret messages like you often read about, but maybe she was using her work phone, as she spent a lot of time in the spare bedroom she used as a home office. About 6 months ago, Katie started coming home after work only to head out again to some work-related events in the evenings. At first, it happened once a week, but it gradually increased to 3 or more times. I'm not a jealous person by nature, but it was impossible not to notice her frequent absences. I understood that she had to fend off attention from men at work, and she claimed to be focused solely on her career. But she often worked more with male executives than female colleagues. The first real suspicion of her infidelity came about a month before what I now call Day X. She stopped by a store before coming home and asked me to help her with the groceries. As I was unloading bags from the trunk of her car, I noticed something pink and shiny under the front passenger seat. It was her bra. I recognized it because she preferred a specific brand of lingerie. Looking back, I realized this was the first major red flag. When she was in the mood, she always took off her bra directly under her clothes. I never understood why, but that was just her habit. Suddenly, I felt a wave of unease, like something was wrong. I couldn't understand why her bra was under the seat. I just left it there. I felt nauseous, and my heart was pounding as I brought the groceries into the kitchen. Katie asked if I was okay because I looked like I'd just seen a ghost. I brushed off her question and tried my best not to look angry or disappointed, but it took an enormous effort to keep my emotions in check. That evening and the next day, I decided to find out if she was seeing someone. I began reflecting on what clues I might have missed. I had no concrete evidence other than the bra incident. We lived in a fairly large city, and her office was downtown. I decided to distract myself from thoughts of infidelity, and instead give her more attention. One Friday after work, I prepared a fancy dinner, set the table with beautiful dishes, utensils, and candles, and bought a nice bottle of wine along with a bouquet of roses. When she came home from work, I pointed out the dinner I had prepared. She gave me a sad smile and apologized, saying she already had plans to meet her colleagues at a local bar. She offered to grab a quick bite with me before heading out, but said she needed to shower first. At that moment, something inside me twisted, and I completely lost my words. I can't even describe the rage I felt, but I couldn't take it anymore. While she was in the shower, I took my work phone and hid it in the back seat of her car. I had been toying with the idea of using it to track her location for the past few days. Then I went and threw the dinner, along with the flowers, in the trash. When she came back from the shower, all dressed up and looking stunning, she asked if we could eat quickly before she left. I told her, "Don't bother. Just go meet your friends." She gave me a strange look and asked if I was upset. I said it hurt me that she never wanted to do anything together anymore. She got angry and told me to stop acting like a child, adding something sarcastic about my temper. I stood there, processing everything, and finally said, "I'm a fool for thinking you'd want to spend even one evening with me." She just smirked and walked out, slamming the door behind her. I pulled out my second phone and started tracking her work phone. I saw that she had stopped about 20 minutes from home, at a bar she often visited with her colleagues. I decided to drive there to find her car. Sure enough, her car was parked in the bar's lot. I parked across from the bar, watching for my car to see if she would come out. I felt completely out of my element, as if I were some kind of stalker. But I justified my actions, telling myself I needed to ease my anxiety about her whereabouts. About an hour after I arrived, I saw her leave the bar with a man. He looked like one of the executives I had seen at her workplace. He hugged her, pulled her in close, and kissed her. I felt my entire body tense up, frozen. They walked to another car and got in together. I did everything I could to not lose sight of them as they left the parking lot. They drove for about 10 minutes and, as you probably guessed by now, stopped at a hotel. I parked on the street near the hotel, watching as they got out of the car, held hands, and walked into the building. I had seen enough. I was an idiot. I started pounding my fist against the steering wheel. That was it. Something inside me became completely hollow. I'm not even sure if I blacked out or had some kind of out-of-body experience. When I came to, I decided I needed a drink. And that's when my life took an unexpected turn. I drove to the outskirts of the city, replaying everything I had just seen in my mind and, I'll admit, crying in rage. About 50 kilometers from home, I found a cozy bar, walked in, sat at the counter, and ordered a drink. I must have looked like the Walking Dead, because the bartender said, "You look like you've been hit by a truck." I let out a bitter laugh and said, "You could say that." A man sat down on the stool next to me and struck up a conversation. I wasn't in the mood to talk, but something about him felt trustworthy. We started chatting, and after a while, the topic of my wife's affair came pouring out. I admitted how badly I wanted to leave her and forget everything. He patted me on the back and said, "Buddy, you're not alone. I went through the same thing a few years ago. I believe things like this don't happen by accident. Your life can change now, for better or worse. It's up to you." Something about his words pulled me out of my despair. I realized I was in pain, but I'd always been able to think logically, and he was absolutely right. We introduced ourselves. His name was Ray. He was a rural kind of guy, but the kind of simple, reliable person I genuinely respect. He asked me when I planned to move out. It hadn't even crossed my mind to think that far ahead. The one thing I did know was that I didn't want to be near my wife anymore. I felt the fight-or-flight response boiling inside me. Ray said, "I'm really sorry you're going through this. I have an idea. If you ever feel like it's time to leave, I have a trailer on my property. It's not in perfect condition. It needs a bit of fixing up. But why don't you come and take a look? Maybe you could live there, at least temporarily. I'd give you a good deal. I even know a nice spot where you could park it. You'd be doing me a favor by keeping an eye on things. It took me a few minutes to process his offer. The bartender overheard and smiled, saying, "Oh, honey, if I could run away from my crazy ex-husband, I'd move into a trailer in a heartbeat, anything to get myself together again." I felt like I was in the twilight zone, but maybe this was exactly what I needed. I told Ray, "I'll think about it, and maybe come check it out." We said our goodbyes, and agreed to meet in a few days. For the first time in a long time, I felt like there was a way out of what I considered a nightmare. My heart was still heavy, but one thing I knew for sure, I never, ever wanted to be with my wife again. For me, cheating was disgusting and always something I could never forgive. When I got home that night, Katie was already there. I sat down on the couch. She came out and asked where I had been. I turned to her and asked, "Where were you?" She said she had gone out for drinks. I asked her directly, "Are you cheating on me?" She looked a bit shocked but quickly composed herself, saying, "No. Why would you even ask that?" I told her I had heard she was involved with someone at work. She asked who told me that. I said it was someone I knew but wouldn't name. She called me ridiculous, said I was drunk and rambling, and then asked again where I had been. I told her I had gone to a bar and had drinks with some friends. She just stared at me, wanting to ask more questions, but eventually went back to the bedroom and went to sleep. I decided to sleep on the couch that night, as I was now completely sure she'd been lying to me for months. I didn't sleep at all, imagining her with that man in bed. The thought made me sick. I was hurt and pitied myself. However, at some point, I started thinking about the trailer. It felt almost like a revelation, and the idea itself began to bring me relief. There must be something wrong with me, but in my pain, the fight or flight instinct kicked in, and the desire to run won out. The next morning, we barely spoke and spent the weekend pretending as if nothing had happened. A few days later, I arranged to meet Ray. We met at his home, a wonderful ranch, and the trailer turned out to be pretty good. It was about 8 meters long and equipped with everything one might need for college living. I had traveled in something similar with friends during spring break and really enjoyed the experience. I made Ray an offer to buy it, and he agreed to sell it to me. Honestly, I felt like I had practically gotten the trailer for free. He gave me directions to his property, and I drove out to take a look. The place was stunning, lots of trees and shrubs, and it seemed like there were hiking and biking trails nearby. The property was at the foot of a mountain, with a small house on a hill where Ray lived, offering a view of the entire area. I connected water and electricity to the trailer. Ray even agreed to tow the trailer to the site and set it up for me. Over the next few weeks, I tried to get Katie to confess, but instead, I faced manipulation and gaslighting. I told her directly that if I found out about her affair, there would be no going back. This only pushed her deeper into her web of lies. She continued to deny everything with incredible conviction, spinning stories so absurd at times that I almost wanted to laugh. I had no tangible proof of her infidelity, and I beat myself up for not taking a few pictures of her with the man when I had the chance. As I wrestled with my feelings, I came to the conclusion that I wanted to end the marriage. Instead of expressing my emotions to her, I started making plans. I secretly moved my belongings out of the apartment while she was at work, transferring them to the trailer. It gave me at least a sense of action. During this time, I noticed changes in Katie's behavior. She started acting kinder toward me, but for me, it was too little too late. While she continued attending her post-work meetings, I decided I needed a break too. One evening, as she was getting ready to leave, I also started putting on my jacket. She looked at me and asked, "Where are you going?" I simply replied, "I'm meeting some friends." She started asking for details, but I said, "You don't know them, and besides, you wouldn't like our conversations about work." It was the same excuse she had given me when I had asked to join her with her colleagues. She looked a bit hurt and said, "All right, have a good time." Between working on the trailer and meeting Ray at the bar, I began making new friends. We had a great time with Ray's friends and family, who welcomed me warmly. And if anyone is curious, I decided to monitor my alcohol consumption to avoid developing any bad habits. It would have been all too easy to drown in self-pity. Around this time, Katie told me she had a work trip coming up the following week. I asked who else would be going, and she said it was a trial team and a few department heads. I just looked at her and said, "I hope you have a great time with your lover." I regretted saying it immediately. It sparked a huge fight with mutual accusations flying. A part of me wanted to know more about her affair partner, but as Ray had once told me, "In the long run, it doesn't matter who the other person is. What matters is that she chose to cross the line. She destroyed the marriage. She can acknowledge it or deny it, but the facts remain." Man, Ray could write a book for people who've been betrayed. Her work trip gave me the perfect opportunity to move out entirely. After Katie left, I gathered everything valuable I had left and loaded it into my car. I didn't take any furniture or anything big, just clothes, work computers, and equipment. Before leaving, I wrote a note I'd intended to leave for her, but after rereading it, I decided to simplify things. I took a piece of paper and wrote, "I hope it was worth it." I placed my wedding ring on top of the note and left it on the kitchen table. I felt an enormous weight lift off my shoulders. I felt free. I no longer needed to hide the truth. I understand that I'll have to deal with the emotional baggage and pain from this experience, but now I have time to heal. I just need to remove her from my life quietly and quickly. I'm ashamed to admit it, but I never got a full confession from her or gave her the emotional dressing down I'd imagined. But I came to the conclusion that she wasn't worth it. She destroyed everything we had. All our plans for the future are now gone. We had been saving for a family home, and now it's all lost. There's no going back. I don't owe her anything. She can deal with the consequences on her own. I didn't have a clear plan, nor did I consult a lawyer or anything like that. I just needed time to figure myself out. I love my new trailer, and the mountain air turned out to be exactly what I needed. Last week, I started running again, and it was incredible. I felt alive. I didn't respond to a single message from Katie while she was away. To be honest, there wasn't much to reply to, just trivial updates like, "We just landed," or "having dinner with the team," and so on. She also sent a few messages like, "Where are you? Let me know how you're doing." On the day she returned, my phone was blowing up with her messages and calls. She kept texting me nonstop. Even her mom tried calling me the next day, but since the only family I have left is my father, and we aren't particularly close, she didn't reach out to him. After the first teary voice messages, I stopped listening to the rest. Her texts ranged from, "What's going on? We need to talk," to, "I don't know what you're thinking, but nothing happened. I didn't cheat on you. I'm not having an affair." A week into my silence, she finally wrote, "I'm sorry. This has gone too far. Yes, I had an affair with someone at work, but it didn't mean anything. I got too caught up in my job. You were off and away, and I just made a mistake. I was planning to end it." Her admission, calling it a mistake, was what I had been waiting for this entire time. But for some reason, it made me hate her even more. Why couldn't she just be honest from the beginning? She was no longer the woman I had once dreamed of building a future with. And mistakes don't last 6 to 8 months, or a year. Her pleas for me to come back and try to repair the marriage quickly turned pathetic. Within a couple of weeks, she stopped bothering me altogether. I still refused to respond to her, not wanting her to know where I was or to intrude on my new safe haven. I didn't want this woman ruining my newfound peace. At one point, she started sending me angry messages. "You're a coward. You don't want to talk to me. You don't care about us. Please come back so we can talk. Where are you? I'll come to you. Damn it, Paul. Please let's talk and fix this." I don't remember all her messages, but they were filled with guilt-tripping and practically no apologies. I ignored them all. Eventually, I changed my phone number. Update 1. Katie sent me an email informing me she had hired a lawyer and was filing for divorce. I replied, "Okay. Sounds good." This triggered a flood of emails from her, demanding that I come to see her, and so on. Realizing it was pointless, she eventually wrote that if I agreed to a divorce without disputes, she wouldn't bother me anymore. I agreed. A few months later, I was finally a free man. Since leaving our apartment, I hadn't seen her again. There was no closure or goodbye for either of us. But it seemed to matter more to her than it did to me. For a few months, I occasionally thought about her. And yes, the pain would sometimes return, especially if I heard a song we used to listen to together. But over time, I stopped thinking about her altogether. Update 2. So, I'm officially divorced now. Life is great. On top of that, I met an amazing woman. It happened while I was out jogging on a trail near my home. I helped her fix a flat tire, and we had a fantastic conversation. She's incredible and incredibly sweet, though a few years younger than me. She loves my lifestyle and even calls me her mountain man. I'm not rushing into a serious relationship, but I'm not closing myself off to love either. I'm still living in my trailer and have no plans to change that. My life has been significantly simplified, and I love being surrounded by nature. It helped me get through the divorce and heartache. I understand that everyone deals with these things differently. I was lucky we didn't have kids and that we were only married for 3 years. So, I think I made the right decision. You don't have to stay with someone who cheats on you. If you're going through something similar, please don't dwell on it. Just move on. Life gets better when you focus on yourself. I wish everyone the best life possible. Update 3. As I mentioned earlier, I had been concerned that my ex-wife was trying to find me, perhaps to reconcile or something. I moved to a new residence about 2 hours away from my old one. Last weekend, I saw her in a cafe I often visit in the nearby town. I suspected her presence there wasn't a coincidence. Thankfully, I managed to leave before she saw me. Later that weekend, I returned to the town for groceries and stopped by the same cafe to get coffee and work on some documents using their free Wi-Fi. After finishing, I left the cafe, and as I walked to my pickup truck, I heard someone shout, "Paul!" I looked across the street, and there she was, Katie. My ex-wife was waving at me. The apocalypse had finally arrived. I froze in shock. She ran across the street, came up to me, and stretched out her arms, expecting a hug. But I instinctively raised my hands, signaling her to stop. She looked very upset and then said, "I've been looking for you. I heard you moved here and wanted to see you. Can we talk?" I felt cornered, truly. So I gave in and said, "All right, let's find a place to talk for a minute." She asked if we could go to her place, to which I firmly replied, "No." She followed me to a bench near a small shop at the end of the block. She started by saying how much I had changed, how she liked my new look, my beard, my physique, the way I carried myself now. She was laying it on thick, and I could see right through it. And I'll admit, she looked damn good, wearing short shorts, a tank top, with her hair tied back in a ponytail, just the way I used to like it. My gut was screaming at me. I could tell she was turning on all her charm. I stayed composed, waiting to see where this was going. She began with an apology for everything that had happened with the affair. She said karma had hit her hard after I left. Her company found out about the affair, and the workplace became so unbearable that she had to quit. Her lover, who had been engaged at the time, was reprimanded and demoted. He blamed Katie for his demotion, and in retaliation, she told his fiancée everything about their affair, which led to their breakup. She lowered her head and started crying. I just sat there, staring off into the distance, not knowing what to say. She straightened up, looked me in the eye, and said she never intended to start the affair. She claimed she got caught up in company politics, fighting for a better position. Her lover manipulated her with his charm and authority. But in her naivety, she thought she was using him as much as he was using her. She said she had planned to confess everything to me, especially after I confronted her about cheating. She hated herself during that time, and the late-night drinking was her way of drowning out the guilt. After I left, she said, she felt stupid and alone, as though her heart had been torn apart by the loss. She immediately ended things with her lover, and since I refused to respond or talk to her, she had to find me to try to make things right and start fresh. She acknowledged that we were divorced, but said she hoped we could have a second chance. I just looked at her and finally let it all out. How dare you think you can just show up here and erase everything you did? Do you think I'm supposed to forgive everything you did to destroy our marriage? I told you before, if you cheated on me, that would be the end. No forgiveness. No second chances. You killed everything we had the moment you crossed that line. Who do you think I am? I told her I had followed her that night and had seen her walk into a hotel with her lover. You know that, right? At that point, I realized I was raising my voice, and people around us started to notice. She began sobbing and grabbed my hand. I let her cry on my shoulder for a bit, but then I gently pushed her away. She looked up at me with tear-filled eyes and said, I know I deserve this. I deserve all of it. But can't you at least let me take you out for dinner or something? I don't want to leave without making sure everything is perfectly clear between us. Give me a bit of your time, the time you never gave me, please, Paul. I know you might not want to hear this, but I love you so much. I didn't realize how much until you left and broke me. I know I broke you just as much, and I can't forgive myself. I don't want to forgive myself for the rest of my life. She started hyperventilating and sobbing uncontrollably. I lifted her up and hugged her. Yeah, I know. But it felt like the only thing I could do at that moment to calm her down. I realized then that I really had broken her heart as much as she had broken mine. We went for a walk, and I found a quiet, secluded trail where we could talk. It helped her settle down. I asked her how she found me, if she had hired a private investigator. She smirked a little and said, No, but I thought about it. She explained that she had run into Stacy a couple of weeks ago and asked how I was doing. Stacy accidentally let it slip that she had seen me recently. Katie pressed her for details, and Stacy eventually told her everything she knew, which wasn't much, just that I was in this town and seemed to be living nearby. After that, Katie started coming here on her weekends, hoping to find me. She blushed as she told me this. I smirked and said, Damn it, Stacy. Can't keep her mouth shut. We ended up going to dinner at a cozy place with a terrace. I made sure we didn't drink anything during dinner. I didn't want to give her any excuse to soften me up or claim she was too drunk to drive home. We ended up having a genuinely good conversation. After dinner, I walked her to her car. She wanted to stay, insisting and pleading for more time together. She swore that she hadn't been with anyone since I left, and that she only wanted to be with me. I told her no, adding that it was still too early for me to even consider going down that path again. She begged for another meeting, but I stood my ground. I gave her my new email address, but that was it. She asked for my phone number, but I refused, saying she would flood me with messages and calls. She started crying and said she would return to town next weekend if I wanted to see her. I didn't respond to that. Before she left, she said she'd email me the details of where and when she'd be in case I changed my mind. Then I asked her directly, "Would you have forgiven me if I had been the one who cheated?" She paused, thought about it, and said, "Yes, I think I would have forgiven you over time. But only if we went to family therapy, worked on reconciliation, and had a lot of conversations, maybe even made some agreements." I replied, "Maybe I could consider that in 5 to 10 years. She looked at me and said, "If it takes that long, I'll wait." Then she took my hands, looked me in the eyes, and said something that truly surprised me. "Damn it, Paul. I will always love you, and I'll do anything to prove it." After that, she left. I'm still shaken by her words because she said them with such conviction. But even so, I can't imagine being with her again. I feel better now, but I can't even entertain the idea of her being a casual fling, let alone anything more. Maybe we could be friends, but honestly, I'm not sure we'll ever work out again. Don't call me weak. I rarely give second chances. When I got home, I went for a long run, had a couple of beers, and felt like I was finally okay. Can anyone guarantee she wouldn't shatter my sense of balance again? I don't know. Honestly, I don't. Everything is still too fresh in my memory. But at least I have the time now to figure things out and see the bigger picture. Update 4. Alright, this will probably be my final update. Her intentions were indeed to reconcile and start over. To those who called me a typical beta, a blue pill simp, or an obedient fool, who would forgive her and go back, sorry to disappoint you. Last week, she sent me a long letter, once again confessing her love and remorse for the affair. She wanted to come over and spend the weekend with me, but I firmly declined. At this point, I'm completely content with my solitary life in a remote area. I don't want to complicate my life in any way. I enjoy spending time with a few women I've met, as well as my friends. At 32, I see no reason to rush into changing anything. I'm on my own path of self-discovery, and I fully intend to stay on it. I replied to her letter, explaining everything as clearly as possible. I refused to give her my new phone number, told her I wasn't interested in reconciling, and said that she had destroyed everything between us. I no longer trust her, nor do I even know who she is anymore. I wished her all the best and said that maybe, someday in the future, we could be friends. Her response was quite telling. She was, of course, deeply disappointed by my decision. But she also revealed that she had accepted a job offer in another state. Her real goal this whole time had been to convince me to move with her. She knew my job was remote, so she assumed I'd want to start fresh with her in a new place. She had little time left before her move and wanted to see me in person to persuade me. Thankfully, I had a business trip scheduled for the week, so our time ran out. Thank God. Now she's out of my life for good. I suspect she'll keep sending letters for a while, but I'm confident that, eventually, she'll realize it's over and move on. And maybe she'll cheat on someone else too. So folks, live your best life. Let go of the baggage from your past and move forward. Good luck to all of you as always. Let me know your thoughts about this story in the comments. Feel free to share your own experiences as well. It'll be interesting to read them. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support means everything to me. Take care of yourselves.